Citizens of the wide world of reefing, welcome to Reef Beef. This is a podcast for reefers to talk about reefy things without pandering. Kind of like if you were at a convention with us and we went out to drinks and then we went to somebody's room and we talked till 4 in the morning. So be warned, this will be laced heavily with profanity. So if you're one of those people that is worried that their kids don't actually know what bad words mean, don't let your kids listen to this show. Welcome
Tell
to
your
Reef
kids to
Beef.
fuck off. Welcome to the Reef Beef world. My name is Ben.
My name is Richard.
And today we're going to talk about the Lacey Act. And we're going to talk about the rise and fall of home fish breeding. And we finally have a guest again, Matt Pedersen. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you for having me, but you didn't pay enough.
I didn't pay enough. Yeah.
You didn't pay enough.
Just
Sorry.
a song and a dance. Hey, and also this show is brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com and Biota, but more about that later.
Now,
All right.
if you people listening don't know, Matt Pedersen won the Masna Award in 2009. He is the senior editor of Coral Magazine and the publisher of Amazonias. Of course, he's got other titles, but I'm giving you just a different one for each title. He's got a lot of species first in breeding. He bred the orange spot filefish, and he's an all-around awesome dude. He's been very active in the hobby for a very long time, doing good works that other people don't want to do because they're a pain in the ass to do. But if he wasn't doing them, we wouldn't have them, and we would all be poorer for it. So thanks for coming on, Matt.
I clearly paid you enough, so we're all good.
That's usually how that works.
Yeah. Hey, I resemble that remark.
Matt, I have
Yes.
not seen you in 2 or 3 years now because we've been sequestered.
Yes,
It's so good to see your face.
it is. It's good to see you guys too.
And I hope this year we can go to shows and hang out like we used to. We'll see though, right?
I will be at Aquarium Expo in
Excellent.
Georgia coming up. I think the entire Amazonas lead staff, myself, Stefan, and Alex Rose, who you may know, will all be there. And then I'm assuming I will be at MACNA this year because it's Milwaukee. It's a drive for me. Big drive, but a drive. So I'm assuming I'll be at MACNA too. And yeah, I'm hoping that we are fine. And we had COVID run through the entire house recently. We're all vaxxed. We're all boosted. That didn't stop anything. So, but at this point, I think Minnesota feels like, fuck it, we're done. Just let it burn.
Yeah,
And,
that's what's going to happen. Because now I am working for the Masna Man. I kind of have to go to those shows, I think. So
Well, there you go.
I'm kind of thrilled to go to the Aquatic Expo. I just talked to Tom Bowling. He'll be there. So that'll be fun. Maybe Ben will
All
come
right.
too. And then MACNA, the same kind of thing. So that'll be great. I know we got a couple of heavy topics to get into, but we like you as a person. What is going on in your reefing world right now that you can tell us about?
Oh, I'm in rebuild mode. We all have those, like, I don't know if we want to talk about that first.
Yeah.
But, like the vase reef that I set up several years ago, that was a proof of concept for a coral issue to kind of like prove, yeah, you really can do it. And it ran for 4 years. And then the heater stuck in the on position one day. And then the heater controller that's meant to like stop that didn't. So double redundancy failure. And the vase was like 100 degrees when I found it and everything was cooked. So I tell people it's been a topic of conversation privately a lot just recently with all these new pico reefs that are being introduced into the market. And people have been emailing and saying, how are you doing this? What are you doing? It was the most successful reef tank I ran. I've had decent reef tanks. It's not I don't know if I'm just a little bit too lazy or just I hate to tinker with something that much sometimes. But that vase reef was beautiful. Everything grew. The Posta Lepora were dumping babies like crazy. and it held a gallon of water. It was fantastic. So,
And what was your maintenance was like? Do 100% water change every week or 2 weeks or
Yeah.
something like that?
every week you fed it 4 hours, and this is all going back to the Maritza vase reef. I followed that protocol basically to the T.
Okay.
And yeah, just I did 100% water change every week. So just drain it out and fill it back up. And so usually it would be feed it and feed all the corals and let them sit there and stew with the food for 3 or 4 hours, then drain it all down. Then I would take and pour in maybe a half gallon of salt water, which would stir up all the detritus, and then suck that out and then fill it, and you're good.
That's all you did every week.
Filtered
It makes
by
me
what?
wonder. We chase water chemistry. We chase all these parameters. We're dosing, and it just I have not done the math. Someone at some point needs to do the math. If you just stuck with big water changes, could reefing be a heck of a lot easier?
Well, I'll tell you, we've been talking about that a lot because in my whole distributed system in the house, have moved to automatic water changes. And now that one of the tanks is being rented, I do more aggressive water changes because it's not just my stuff, right? And I've said almost forever that all filtration is just an excuse to not do water changes, and that if you have access to water, big enough water for your system, doing water changes is the easiest way to maintain a reef.
Every reef I've run and been happy with has involved just routine water changes. And yeah, I've dosed other things and stuff, but I'm not maintaining a 400-gallon reef. I might feel very differently. But we had problems with our club helped establish a reef aquarium at the Lake Superior Zoo.
Right.
And we had a lot of problems with that. And at one point, we just got to the point where the remedy was we just need to do some massive water changes and reset the water chemistry. But that, as far as I know, that never got happened. And that's about when the pandemic started. So last I've heard, it's a shadow of its former self, but it also never really quite got there. And it was that simple act of trying to dose your way out of problems instead of just hitting that reset button. And I think that's why I look at that vase reef experience, and I've got in my head this idea to like create a ultra compact coral farm using like rain gutters and just like running an LED above a rain gutter and just ultra low volume, high capacity, and you just dump the water every week, flush it out. As long as you can trust your salt mix and you've got a good reservoir, it's at the right temperature, the right salinity, just flush it out, fill it back up, and be done.
Now, I'll tell you, I've had that same idea just with the gutters, but not with the water, because every South Pacific coral facility I go to has got drain troughs, and they're all just filled with coral. And that's because the flow is just rushing through it all the time. And if you did that with gutters, you would certainly be able to do that. I love being simpatico with you.
You just put a squid on there, and for half the time it goes that way, and then half the time it goes in the other way, and it just zigzags back and forth. I think that would just be awesome.
100%.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Ned. Sorry.
Two things. This vase reef did you have any sort of filter on it? Canister?
No.
Just
Nothing.
movement. Like Ling what was that guy? Ling Ching?
Li Ching Eng.
Li Ching.
Yes.
Hey.
Yes.
I partially got the name wrong. Because my brain was starting to say Ling Sai, but that was ecosystem.
It's just an air feed. That's all it has.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is if you don't straighten those pictures behind you, I'm gonna have a shit fit.
These?
Yes. Oh my God. Stop. Stop it.
And if you do straighten them, I'm gonna have a shit fit. So you've got to pick who you like more.
One straight and one crooked. I could handle that.
There you go. That's the Richard Ross.
And that's
the Ben Johnson. We're good.
perfect.
Oh my God.
No?
No,
Okay.
just
No, one's straight, one's crooked.
They were both good. There we go.
I want to just hit two things.
Yes.
First, I think just to head off people in comments, none of us here are saying that dosing or trying to chase chemistry down is a bad idea in and of itself. that
No.
may end up being fantastic. I don't think it's fantastic now, but it may end up being fantastic. We're not anti that. If anything, we're anti that for new hobbyists because they end up just having all kinds of problems because
too complicated.
they're chasing
I
stuff.
found for me it burned me out. It just
Having
would
to-
be like the complexity of chasing the chemistry and how much do I need to dose? How much? I mean, I think of it more like how the planted aquarium hobby works, where they've kind of got that methodology of, especially in a smaller tank, where you just dump in the right amount proportion of everything, fertilizer wise. And you want to talk about a really humbling hobby. That is for me a really intimidating hobby. Growing a really nice, beautiful aquascaped tank. I've tried it twice. I've failed twice. So like that's one of my next. I want to cross that hurdle, jump that hurdle, whatever. Before I pass, I guess like I want to have a good aquascape that actually lasts. But you can. It's the same kind of thing. Like the investment of equipment and time and energy. It's just easier, especially on a smaller system. That vase reef, just drain it, fill it, be done. And by far, the corals just grew like fantastic. And they were, the Post-Lepore were spawning. What more could you want at that point?
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it's tiny. And I get when you're running a 400-gallon system,
but
the economy of doing a 400-gallon water change is not on that same scale. There's got to be a place where they do one of these.
But you hear a lot of people still giving the advice that a bigger reef is easier because it's more stable. But as with everything, you're just trading one concern for another. And
True.
if I was running anything between a 20 or a 50-gallon tank, which for most people is plenty enough. I mean, that's a lot of. You could put a lot of stuff in there, and doing massive water changes to make your life easy. It's just so. I think a lot of new people to the hobby would have a better experience and more success early on if they simplified it like that instead of trying to jump straight into a 100-gallon tank even.
Rich, were you in Chicago in my condo? Were you one of the lucky people who got to be there? When there was no. Okay, so I remember like Kathy Leahy and Matt Carberry, and we were all crowding around my little nanocube, and there's the pygmy angelfish spawning in a 24-gallon tank, and those tanks were 5-gallon water changes each once a week. And they held, when you took everything out, they probably held about 15, 20 gallons of water at the most, probably 15. And again, it was one of those, I just did the work. And yeah, it was a little time, but those tanks never really had a problem.
Right.
And everything grew, everything did well. And when I got away from that, it's the hobby became harder, not easier. And that's not where any of us want to go.
Yeah.
You want success.
Right. And make it easy. So not too big. Do good water changes, you're good. And just before we lose it, because not everyone's familiar with the vase reef, and you were almost talking about it, it's just sand, some rock, some corals, a heater, and an air bubbler. And did you...
And a light, of course.
And a light.
R38 LED light. Yeah.
Par 38 LED light. The air bubbler, was it an open tube, or did you have some kind of... Just an open tube?
No limewood air stones.
No. That would just it was just a course.
Turn it into a skimmer.
no, it was just a coarse air feed. It was just there to move the water. You probably could have gotten away with like a real small internal circulation pump. I know some people do that. I have the entire fish room in the basement, so I have a central air system. So I just tapped a feed up from the basement to run the reef. So,
and for that size tank, air, 100%.
And it has the lid, so there was really no salt spray and salt creep. I mean, that's like the bane of my existence up here because it's so dry. Right. So we get tons of salt creep in the winter, and that vase reef never had salt creep. It was so it's sitting there and it's running, but it has nothing other than sand and live rock in it right now, and I just haven't decided what to do. I haven't picked out a replacement heater. I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll like pick something from the Caribbean or from Florida that maybe I can just keep it at room temperature. I'm kind of leaning towards maybe some curlicue anemones and some Pedersen shrimp and call it a day.
Nice.
Just something different, or an entire Goniopora garden in a tiny little thing. Or I don't know. I've thought about putting like one acropora in this tank and one acropora in another tank and just letting them just fill it up. So
I love it.
I don't know. I kind of go back and forth, but it was so simple, and it helped me find the joy in a hobby where we've talked about it in other settings and other scenarios. Like how do you avoid burnout in the hobby, and how do you reinvigorate yourself? And that was one of the most exciting and fun and different projects I did that really reminded me of why I like to keep fish and like to keep reefs. So
That's awesome. You before the base reef, you were a big breeder man.
yes.
Yes, you were involved in MoFib, and you were involved in the
Oh,
FBI, and you and all of those things. And we can talk about that or not, but they're not really functional now. But I know we were talking before we recorded, and you mentioned about hobbyist breeders and how you feel like maybe that there was a heyday for us and then it's gone.
I feel, yeah.
Tell
kinda
us
feel
about
like-
that.
Well, so I remember being a kid, like 13 years old in Chicago, being a member of Suburban Aquarium Society, back when aquarium clubs were really a thing, because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all this, Facebook, and that was how you had that social connection. And I remember being told that, there's a saltwater club starting, the Chicago Milan Marine Aquarium Society, and I went and I was a founding member of that. I was probably 13 or 14 at the time, and I remember someone telling me, "Oh, you really need to see this guy, this guy in Schaumburg, which is like 40 minutes away from where I lived, or actually 25. It doesn't matter. He's got a basement full of clownfish. He breeds like so many clownfish. It's all he does." And I remember thinking that, yeah, that would be pretty cool. And I had a pair of Ocellaris at home, and I feel like they might have spawned, but I was young. I didn't even know what I was really looking for. So to this day, maybe they were laying eggs in their little whelk shell. I don't know. But all these years later, mid 2000s, I got to meet that guy in Schaumburg, and I got to see his fish room. That was Joe Lichtenbert at Reef Propagations Inc. And he had a basement probably the size of mine, and had thousands and thousands and thousands of clownfish in it. And he was it was basically his living, and he was wholesaling them to a couple of local distributors and a couple shops. And he says that he raised just under 1 million clownfish in that basement and kept meticulous records. And this is back right about the time he retired, right about the time that less expensive clownfish started being imported from Asia as captive bred, and it got to a point where the cost to produce a clownfish was the same as what he could sell it for. And so he said, "All right, hang up the hat, I'm done." But it was folks like him that inspired me to try my hand at marine fish breeding. And so there was a lot of mentorship and support in that community. I want to say it was that was kind of what started. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I started breeding fish in my little condo in Chicago in all my nano cubes and jamming them full of fish and getting flamed constantly because I've got 20 marine fish in a 24-gallon tank. And I've been keeping saltwater a long time. I'm not saying you should do it the way I do it, but it was working. Yeah, that led into MoFib and starting that when I got booted from Reef Central for being a commercial operation with my 750 square foot condo with hardwood floors. And commercial operations like to put hardwood floors in. That makes a lot of sense.
That was
So
I got booted for that too, because I bred some cuddles, like 12 of them, and then wanted to sell them, and they said, "You're commercial." What a weird time.
If you're breeding fish, you're doing it for money. That was what I was told. It's like, no. No, I'm pretty sure I'm not doing this for money. I'm losing money. So
I got booted because I was talking about Eco Aqualizer.
Well, I will boot you from this podcast if you talk about Equalizer.
Eco Aqualizer.
All right, you're out of here. Get out of here. End that feed.
You can't kick me off of my own show.
Yeah, I can.
I can try here.
I run the video feed, baby.
Now it'll be rich. Hey, Richard,
Benjamin.
do you know a lot about Biota Group?
I do know some about Biota Group.
I love them.
Why do you love them?
Well, I've been ordering them from, I think, about 5 years. I just looked on my QuickBooks. I've been ordering from them for about 5 years, just because they have captive bred selection of a lot of different things that are put in clients' tanks. I mean, I like to put my money where my mouth is, or my mouth where my money is, and it's just I'll give you an example. Syncyropa splendidus, the psychedelic mandarin fish. All the time I would order them in, and it was just sort of a crapshoot, but they're so gorgeous. And every client that I have, they always want something like that. And it used to be like, I don't know, it depends, like order 3 to get 1 alive. I've ordered their Syncyropa splendidus. Now they come in small, and that makes you worry at first, but they are extremely hardy. I think over the last year, I've ordered 15, and I'm telling you, all 15 are alive in different client tanks. And they grow super fast too. It's amazing. They really do.
So Biota does, they specialize in captive rape stuff. They've got a facility in Florida. They've got one in Hawaii, and they've got one in Palau. I've been to the Palau facility 4 times. It's amazing to see people really putting their money where their mouth is and doing the business in the way they think it should be done, so it's responsible and sustainable. So just thrilled to have them as a sponsor of the show. Biota, the Biota Group, check out the link down below. Buy their stuff directly from them or buy it from a retailer. If you have a retailer that doesn't carry Biota stuff, you should get them to bring it in, because it's good for the world, which is good for the hobby. So check it out, thebiotagroup.com. Check out the link below. So it also feels like at that time, the mad scientist vibe felt more alive then, because you know, I've been looking at forums a lot recently because I'm an idiot, but it's so weird to watch people both reinvent the wheel constantly when there's a wheel right here, but they just look around and go, we should have a round shaped thing. It's like it's here. And talk about, you know, people, we if you wanted a pump, there were only a couple you could get, and you couldn't just, you know, sometimes you needed to use airlift tubes. You know, remember when prop pumps came out and we were all like trying to making our own propeller pumps with you know, hobby, with RC boat pumps and things like that, and we were figuring out how to do all kinds of stuff with what was available. And now a lot of that stuff you can just buy, and it's kind of interesting. Do you think that's got something to do? Well, I mean, you were talking about, tell us more about the breeding thing around then, because when I first met you, man, everything was breeding, and I bred my first clownfish because you were like, just breed clownfish, you dummy. You should try it. And then Frank, what was Frank's name? The bang guy, Frank Marini, was like, Rich, put some bang guys in your sump, you fool. And then that just went nuts, and I started breeding everything I could. But there was like MoFib and the MBI were these kind of thriving communities of people sharing techniques and information. And a lot of those people are still around. They're just not front and center, right? So what's going on? Or are we just old men yelling at clouds?
Well, no. So you know the inner workings of MoFib and how that kind of collapsed and led into MBI, and we don't need to rehash.
I'll just say, was a fucking nightmare. And it's a shame that all happened, because it didn't have to. That's all. Well,
but look who's still around and look who's not.
Yes.
So, but that foisted itself into the MBI, which is great. And I mean, the reason we were all set to have an MBI workshop, an 11th MBI workshop, and the pandemic is what killed it. So I am hopeful that those will return. That was a very special gathering that happened every year. And that seemed to survive the rise and fall of forums, which I directly blame social media for. The whole reinvent the wheel 10 times is because of social media, and because of the incredible ease at which anyone can publish anything and just overwhelm the system. I mean, I was talking, I think I was talking with Jake last week, who I don't get to talk to that often, but we were just going like, he's like, did you see this? Did you see that? I said, I'm too busy making my own content for the magazines and for Reef to Rainforest to even like pay attention. There's just so much information overload. It's kind of like, I don't know how many people are going to see the Reef Beef versus watch another podcast or another live stream, and who is important. And that's a whole nother discussion we could have in a minute, but
bandwidth.
Yeah, there's only so much bandwidth. And I mean, we talk about, being one of the owners in Amazonas, my biggest mission this year is to figure out how to get more subscribers than we have. We're fine. I just look at it and say, we should have a lot more. And where is that disconnect? What are we, and we're going to work on that, because, and this is something where 10 people put a lot of time and effort into creating this. And, it's 100 some odd pages of vetted information put together by multiple people with credentials and expertise, and anyone can hop on, start up a live feed on YouTube and shout out to a bunch of followers and then just spout off. And
vetted information is the interesting part. I kind of knew we were in trouble when I saw forums starting to have articles and realizing that those weren't really articles. They were just longer form posts and I knew, and I was really worried because there were never any citations. So it was like, oh, they're not even looking back to see. Like, I get the idea that every 10 years we need an article about what tangs are good herbivores, right? I get that we need that in a new voice, but not looking back to see what was said before and build on those shoulders struck me as something to be worried about. And apparently you too. So what happened to the breeders though? I mean, why?
Well, that I think is different. I think part of it was, like the MBI site was brought down for technical reasons, and they could never get it reconstituted the right way. So that slowed down MBI considerably. And that was no fault of the organizers. It was the fault of how the thing was built and the people who built it not being interested in carrying it forward, and then trying to find someone else who could. I'm a web developer by trade, and even I was like, that's not me. I don't know that language. I'm out of it. So that's part of it, but really the rise of Facebook. And then the other side of this is, I feel like back when you and I were really into this, there was a lot of uncharted territory. There was a lot that you could accomplish as a hobbyist and claim a species first, do something no one had ever done. I was really excited because so much of the freshwater, like the really ingrained long-term hobby, is all about breeding fish. You don't just keep the fish and enjoy them. Right. You procreate them, you keep them around, you spread them around. That's where all the Breeders' Award programs come from. That's how the MBI kind of was different, was having that sort of Breeders' Award program built, kind of baked into it, put out there for clubs to leverage as a framework. I mean, one year I think I bet Chad Wasson a case of beer that my club would beat his club when it came to how many points we got in the MBI, and I think I still owe him a case of beer.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, I always forget that people don't know, right? The Marine Breeding Initiative is a group that grew out of MOFIB. We don't have to talk about MOFIB. And there was a council the council recommended torture. The council, as a breeder, you would keep a log of what you were doing, and for your successes and milestones, you would get points. And if you were, depending on how hard the species was, you would get points. I got to find my certificates too. I know that what Matt's looking for his certificate. You would get species first and you would get points, and all the information was captured. So if you wanted to breed a marine beta, you would go look up marine beta. You're a progressive breeder, right?
I don't think that's the highest rank I achieved. I think that was my first.
And you would have, if you wanted to breed that animal, you would have a whole wheel that you could use as a model instead of rebuilding it. And so it was very exciting to do a species first. Like you did the orange spot filefish, I did the Sepia bendensis, the cuttle,
Yep.
and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, here's all this methodology that's worked for other species. Ding, 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 ding. And Matt
Well,
Whittenridge
and
was involved, and all these, all the people that Karen Britton was involved, all the people you hear about as big time breeders now, they were you could talk to them directly all the time. And I bitch about forums currently all the time, and Andy Ryan gave me some crap about it, and he started talking about talking on the MBI, and I was like, that's not what we have now.
no,
So anyway,
no, we
that's
still, the biggest problem is that Facebook has improved, but you can't look something up easily. You can't. There's no web link to someone's post about spawning a new species right now or working on something. That's not accessible. That's not findable. It's buried. And so that reality is why, at this point, yeah, there are people who are going to think, oh, well, I was the first to breed this. And it's like, no, it was done 20 years ago. Just simply because the information isn't out there. But I think part of it is that the hobbyist thunder kind of just died down with all of that. And part of it was like, it's harder to accomplish something new. That was part of the fun. That was part of the chasing, like I started out the orange spotted filefish breeding log. I said, let's call it a survival log. Like, let's just see if I can keep the species alive. I knew in the back of my head where I wanted to go. I had no idea if that was remotely possible, but I had a bunch of people cheering me along, following, not judging. And that was encouragement. I remember calling Joe Lichtenbert, jumping up and down. Oh my God, they just spawned. This is so incredible. Like that feeling is, I don't know if it's still around. But part of it too, I think we've just seen the maturity of breeding fish. Whereas, we're not going to be doing yellow tangs in our homes. I think we've all come to that reality that you have to be a really crazy mad scientist to think you're going to breed these in your home. Doesn't mean you can't spawn them. Doesn't mean you can't try. But the resource and the scale needed, it's the same reason no one breeds red-tailed sharks at home. Yeah, you could probably figure out how to do it, but there's no reason to at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know what really replaced that aspect of our hobby. Where that frontier mentality has really gone, because at the time that's what it was. It was, I'm on the cutting edge. This is the thing. This is important because, let's face it, everything we're up against in terms of politics and wild fisheries and the debate over sustainability. And, I used to get accused of being against wild caught fish solely because I was a marine fish breeder. I had more than one person say, you're just out to shut down the industry. I was like, where do you think my brood stock is coming from?
Yeah.
No. But, and then, we go back and forth on, my idea of the aquarium arc and what that really means. And I remember being lambasted for that by people who didn't even watch the whole talk and was like, no. There's more to this. It's not, it's bigger than that. But, this entire issue about Godeids, and I messaged this to you, but these fish are only really around because of the hobby and because of how that inspired institutional breeders to pick up the torch and go with it, but they still work with the hobby. And that was another interesting thing about that time period was the commercial breeders, the institutional scientists, they all came together and exchanged ideas in a way that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, and and it's become harder now. As I used to feel that public aquariums could be a champion for the hobby, right? Because we work hand in hand. But that really hasn't panned out. Public aquariums have had to get more protective about themselves. And, you can't they can't just share their extra animals out.
Yep.
And that's both good and bad. But that I'm going to reach out and get information and brood stock and help from somebody who's doing this professionally, that's harder to do now. It just because that's the way the world is now. intellectual property is more important, and people are keeping that close to the vest. And you know, and now that there's money involved in breeding, you know, I mean, MoFib kind of part of it was people were wanting to take some of that information and not share because they wanted to make money, which was antithetical to the whole idea.
That was yeah.
But now
But
now there's actually money involved, so it becomes even more interesting.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting to talk to someone like Courtney O's with the copper band butterfly fish breeding, and to hear him say, you know, like, we're a land grant facility, we are obligated basically by charter, by law, whatever, to share our information. So yeah, there's going to be more about how we bred copper banded butterflies because that's our charter. I was like, well, that's awesome, because I would be happy to like keep this like on a surface level. I've published articles where it's like, you need to just tell me what's proprietary and we won't share that. That's fine. I understand the need that you to give up proprietary information damages your ability to further this. So I get that.
But at the same time, I also remember, I remember when I was putting together to do the species first for the cuddles, and I was like, oh God, I hope someone doesn't scoop me on this. But at the same time going, oh God, I hope someone scoops me on this. You know,
I've been sitting here since 2008, like 2009. I don't remember. Yeah, 2008 is when I actually did the orange spotteds, and I've been waiting for someone to repeat it. And anyone who is interested in it, I will talk freely and openly. And it's getting to the point where I'm looking at some of the tanks in the basement going, you know, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I just don't really feel like I have the time. But if no one else is going to repeat my success, I better go see if I can repeat my success, because I know a few people tried, but no one's been able to replicate my work, and that's really frustrating because I didn't hide anything.
Why do you think people aren't doing it? Just because it's already been done, and it's hard. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
do something else.
Yeah, I think that all is a part of it.
Well, when someone puts forth like that sort of effort, you know, and they want to be able to, at the end of the day, like claim a prize for it.
Well, even just to be recognized for the accomplishment, I get that.
Yeah.
Part of it, which we didn't really talk about, was just the total explosion and kind of Pokemon collectoritis with designer clownfish for a while. That was just like, you know, like they were just going for insane amounts of money, and people were like trading clownfish left and right. Like the pricing was just exorbitant. But I remember before that all happened, when something like being able to have McCullochys or Latizinatus, that was like the pinnacle, because it was a species of clownfish that at the time maybe hadn't been bred. And so there was a way to do something new. And then the designers kicked in, and then, well, now we can't, we've only got so many genes, so let's hybridize to make new things. I understand the driving force behind wanting to create something that the world has never seen before. Because I have that in me. There is that interest and intrigue to just see something new that never existed. And I think it's going to happen with coral at some point. I mean, we saw, you know, talk about hybrid bird's nests recently. Scolies being bred. I mean, well, they're not scolies anymore, but coral breeding is like the next frontier. I mean, that's thinking it through and knowing where my head is at. Yeah, breeding corals is the next frontier.
Yeah,
and
it's a pain in the ass too.
Yeah, but the people who do it get the recognition and contribute something of benefit to the hobby and the trade as a result. You know, if we're not going to be able to get corals out of Australia forever, we're going to need to learn how to breed homophilia, or we're not going to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you keep up on the clownfish still? Because I think the designer clownfish craze for lots of money is still going on. I just saw something called like the platinum bullet hole clownfish selling.
That's nothing new.
You know, $800.
There really hasn't been anything new in several years now.
It seems like it's slowed down to me.
I mean, there's just no new genes have been discovered. So at this point, it's probably more about selective breeding just to refine a trait you want. You know, it's not like when the lightning showed up and suddenly, well, here's this whole new gene. I am surprised that no one's created like a Mai Tai clownfish using the lightning.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still new hybrids and new genetic combinations to be made.
Well,
And part of that also. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting. I'm just thinking about Oscars, and Oscars were the designer fish for a while, and there was the tiger Oscar, and then there was the albino Oscar, and then there was the longfin Oscar, and there was a longfin albino Oscar.
Well, now they have lemons. Have you seen those? Lemon?
Yes.
The lemon Oscar?
Yeah.
Lemon Oscar.
I haven't seen one with my own eyes, but the pictures, they look pretty.
That destroys my entire point, so I'm glad you brought that up.
At some point, there's going to be another new clownfish gene. It happens. It's like the Philippine blue gene in domestic angelfish.
Yeah.
That totally, once that was discovered and once it got out there, the angelfish breeding hobby just chased it down and beat it to death.
Is that those Pinoy? The Pinoy?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen those on lists.
They came out of the.
Go ahead. Came out of the Philippines.
Philippines, yeah, which is where that name Pinoy comes from.
I've just seen them on lists, and then I looked them up, and I was like, "Damn, it's like a metallic blue-looking freshwater angelfish."
Yep.
What's that?
Entirely legit.
What's that stupid fish I love with the big head? I can't remember the name.
Flower horn.
Oh, flower horn.
What a
hybrid cichlids.
What a stupid, wonderful fish that is.
They're very mean.
Yeah. I mean, but people keep them almost as pets.
Which
and
is,
if it's a one per tank pet kind of fish, okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong. We did that entire issue of Amazonas on man-made fish, and it's all about the uber domestication and creation of all these fish, and glowfish and all these different man-made fishes. And when you really thought about it, there was room for that.
Yeah,
there's room for that in the hobby. And if it's glowfish that get my kids into keeping fish, they're not going to keep glowfish forever. They're going to move on. They're going to find the other things. Like my daughter's favorite fish right now is a Brochardi cichlid that's sitting over there on my desk. Because back when this was COVID office for everyone, both my kids were sharing my office here, and we're all at home 24/7. And I had a tank in the basement, and we just set it up. And I think I put some shrimp, and we tried to make it a planted tank, total failure. And then at some point, I got a Brochardi cichlid in by accident in a shipment. And I basically she saw it and she's like, "Can I have it?" I'm like, "It might cause problems, but sure." And now it's the only fish, but she loves it.
That's great.
It's not a glowfish. It's a beige fish with white fins, white edges on its fins even.
And some personality.
It's graceful and subtly beautiful. It's not overt color. It's like me and Mark Levinson fighting over freshwater fish, trying to outdo each other. And this would never win against Mark. Mark would be like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about." But
no, I'm with you on that,
now.
Matt. You get that argument of freshwater versus saltwater. I mean, I started when I was a kid with freshwater, and to this day, there's tons of freshwater stuff that I love. I really do. If you ask me, there's not like a big loss of love between saltwater and freshwater. I like all of it.
I'm always on the edge of setting up a 200-gallon tank with one of those giant gouramis in it.
Yeah.
That would, instead of a dog or a cat. I've always, since I was a little kid, loved that fish.
I used to take care of a tank with a huge, like a 2 foot, 2.5 foot.
Yeah.
One in it.
So they're so great. And we used to feed. I remember feeding. Oh no, I don't want to talk about that. No, feeding at the store. The first store I worked for in like '82 or something like that. Had a big 240-gallon tank with big arowana in it, and the guys used to feed them mice, and that was a crazy thing to watch. Before we even really understood that those fish hunt by jumping up and catching birds out of the air. Watching them eat mice was wonderful. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Richard.
You know what I like?
You like saltwateraquarium.com.
I do like saltwateraquarium.com because I buy stuff from them.
Yeah.
And they've got everything I need for my aquarium world in my house. And it gets to me really quickly. And they're really nice people. I enjoy talking to them at trade shows. And
they have an app for your phone that you can order off of. Makes it easier.
Which is super awesome. Why do you like them, Ben?
I like them just because I think they're. You can look at it this way: it's a smaller company. It's not like a giant conglomerate. So some people are kind of into that. So and you have to admit too, it does allow them to give like a personal touch to things.
I certainly love to know that my package was put together and taped up by Kenneth's grandfather.
Yeah,
That makes
and
me really
his
happy.
great grandfather as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that so much. They've got a bunch of stuff. They've got all kinds of discounts that they give to first responders, to people who are served in the military. Really nice way to give back. You can get a whole bunch of points. So when you buy stuff, you gain points, and then you get
Refer
stuff
a friend.
essentially. Excuse me?
When you refer a friend, when you sign up for an account, when you download your profile in there, you get points for all these things. So your first order could end up getting a few things for free.
Yeah, it's great. So I like that. There's something I'm missing, Ben. Something we usually
The cleanup crew, the in-house cleanup crew.
right. And what's so great about that?
Well, they're doing it in-house, and they have the specimens they send you are large. They're not bumping that off to some random wholesaler somewhere. And so they also run it in a fishless system, so you don't have to worry about disease in that regard.
Yeah.
They label it right on the bag what the thing is, so in case you're new to this, you don't have any questions about what's in the bag.
So
they can get stuff to you real quick because they have 3 locations to ship from all across the United States.
So check out saltwateraquarium.com. Use the link below. Put a little note that Reef Beef sent you because they like to know that their advertising is useful for them. And check them out. They've been good to us. I've been shopping with them way before Reef Beef existed. So I was thrilled when they came in as a sponsor. Check them out, saltwateraquarium.com. Hey, before we move on to your beef, because this is Reef Beef, and I know you have a beef, you said something about who is important and knowing who is important that we could get to. And
Okay.
I'd love your take on that, because we've decided that this show will only be important if it finds an audience that thinks it's important. We're not
pushing it in that direction.
pushing a little bit, like, subscribe, share, send us money, but really subscribe and share. But we're not really doing the dance of look at us.
We also had a show where we said we don't give a fuck what you do.
Yeah, we're punk rock in that way. But it is really interesting to me to watch, and to Ben, we talk about it all the time, to watch all that stuff. So you said something about it, so I'd like to hear what you meant with whatever I just said, and when you said who is important and how to know that.
Oh. Well, now you're putting me on the spot.
Hell yeah,
That's what you're here
baby.
for. That's what you're here for.
Except here at Reef Beef, we said we're putting you on the fucking spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think it's not about an individual. I want to be clear about that. It's not about you should listen to Sanjay Joshi on lighting and no one else. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that ability to discern whether you're dealing with a beneficial, reliable source for information and advice, or if you're just going to go out there for confirmation bias. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
If you're just going to go out and look for the answer that you want, you're going to find it. And I mean, that is front and center the problem we are facing in this world on so many levels now. So, it's an interesting conundrum, and I can speak more about Amazonas because we are having these conversations where we're talking about, we publish a publication that's really tailored to the advanced hobbyist. They know what a tiger barb is. They know what, they want to see something like going into French Guiana to collect fish, or seeing a really new rare catfish that's just been discovered, or learning how to breed something arcane or really unique. Like an entire issue on Gadeids, which is a tiny, they're not
very niche.
They're not, most of them are not very pretty, if we're honest. I mean,
no, they're not.
Not going to win. This is not going to win the saltwater battle. This one might. Where is it?
There are
weirdo. I like that stuff though.
Well, that's what we were raised on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so like this one's pretty. I don't think anyone's going to argue that that's not a pretty fish.
It's gorgeous.
But that's not that's not a fish you walk into a pet store and find. You have to hunt down and find that fish if you want to keep it, and probably give it a tank with nothing else if you want to keep it and enjoy it. So, I mean, in some respects, the freshwater hobby is so replete that there is an incredible abundance of diversity available at this point in the hobby, that far outpaces what we have in the marine world. You know, I think we talk about how many fish are in the marine aquarium trade, and it might be like 1,500 to 2,000. And then I think about like, well, how many cichlids are there in Lake Malawi?
Yeah.
It's like 1,500 to 2,000. Like,
Yeah.
so you could be a Malawi cichlid exclusive hobbyist and never leave the confines of a single lake, and you'll never run out of fish to keep and enjoy and experience.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of on the sidetrack. I think the point really I'm trying to make is that we live in a world where literally anyone can put anything online. There's no one stopping you from putting any crazy whack job idea you want out there. And then furthermore, there's the rabid defense of those ideas, even when they're debunked.
Yeah.
Or you know, someone who actually knows what they're talking about comes along, and suddenly the credentials don't matter, because whoever's shouting the loudest or says the thing you agree with, that's the expert, not the person who actually has expertise.
But okay, so don't you also see that that's sort of a phenomenon of, I guess, what I would call fanboyism?
Oh, yeah, a little. I mean, yeah.
You get some
it's
personality on social media, and people follow him, like him, and like, oh, I started watching you and I didn't know anything. And you just sort of fanboy out. And then an expert would come along, say something different. And then the wagon circle, like, don't you talk about blah, 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 like that. It's like a PhD.
It's our politics. It's the way our society has discourse now. We don't discuss ideas and find compromise and solutions. We are all or nothing. And we are dealing in absolutes, and there's no gray area. But again, I see a big part of it is this push against credentials. It's almost like if you show up with credentials of any sort, you're already at a disadvantage just because you have those credentials. People are looking for an excuse to tear you down instead of just sitting back and respecting and listening to what those credentials mean. And that really segues into what's going on right now.
I think I wanted to add one thing to that, which was it's not just confirmation bias. I'm seeing a huge chunk of new hobbyists being naive. So it's not they're going to look for answers. They ask a question and they take the first thing that sounds reasonable.
But that's
and then stop reading. Well, it's not. I mean, you know, we always say, Ben and I say this a lot, which is, look, how do you vet somebody who's giving you advice, right?
Yep.
And I say the easiest way to do that is to look at their tank. If they have a tank,
so you should not look at my tank.
Yeah, well, but
that's not very good.
I just said it's an easy way to do it. If you like what their tank looks like, take their advice. If you don't like what their tank looks like, don't take their advice. Now, there's other stuff. You know, you don't keep tanks necessarily for them to be pretty. That's a different gig. But
my wife would really appreciate if I did, though.
You should get a giant gourami.
So you know, but I hate to like point back to things that I've written, but there's the blog posts on the Coral website. Can Facebook identify a clownfish? And that was the problem 5 or 6, 7 years ago now, where I took fish that I knew would be a little hard to identify and put them up there and said, what is it? Pretended like I didn't know, to see what my friends and associates and strangers all said. And, you know, it was like 70% of people weren't even in the ballpark.
Yeah.
You know, so if you went with the majority rule, you would have been wrong. And then somewhere buried in all those bad answers was the one guy who was like, I know exactly what those are. They are this, and totally got steamrolled by this deluge of bad information. That is kind of what we're up against.
It's so interesting. I'm so glad Coral Magazine is still around, because the online magazines have been so diluted, I think, by forum posts becoming articles, that when you can hold something in your hand and go, someone did this, and someone cared and checked, I think that's really useful. And
more than one person checked.
Right.
Usually it's 3 or 4.
man,
You know?
when we did the coral spawning issue, there was a lot of vetting going on with that, which I totally appreciated.
Well, and going back and forth, like making you guys check each other's work.
Yeah.
Like
So
hold each
maybe
other
that's
accountable.
maybe we'll get back to print being useful. I think we're looking.
Oh, it's useful. Don't get me wrong. It's very
no.
useful.
I mean, but used,
Appreciate it.
and
Yes,
you know,
yes.
maybe it's time for me to
Appreciate
get off my ass and do the library idea, the vetted library of articles where we would have Masna Award winners give a synopsis and a rating to this article, and you know what's changed and what you should look out for, but what's really good, just in a paragraph, and then you can go read the rest of the article for details and collect Randy Holmes's old article. You know, get them all in one damn place, with somebody going, "This is good. This is not as good. Be careful." So we could all be on the same page. It's like we have a million communities that don't talk to each other.
Well, books used to be the thing, and you know what it takes to do a book. You know, I mean, we still talk about the authors of these great reefing books and hold them in high esteem, and it really hasn't fallen. But when's the last great reefing book come out?
There's no money in it.
Yeah, and that's because you can just go get free answers on the internet, right? I don't need to pay $50 for a book.
We were just talking at Reef Beef this afternoon about, you know, I want to capture what I'm doing here somewhere. Like I used to have build threads on tanks, and it's like, I don't know, you know, forums are weird. What should we do? Should I put a blog, basically a blog roll on Reef Beef site? And then somebody said, well, why don't you just do it in video? And it was like, well, video is so temporary, in a way, but maybe that's the way to go. I don't know what the answer is. I'm struggling.
Video is certainly an interesting format to have come into its own. We've been talking about video for years, and if we're going to do it, how are we going to do it? We have a Amazonas YouTube channel now, but it's really basic. There's a couple interviews that I have to get together to drop that have been done. So we are still using it as ancillary bonus content. Unless people start paying for YouTube videos, I can't support a staff of 10 people to produce them. You know,
right.
That business model doesn't work. So,
but what you can do is you can have people go, I put a fish in my pee hole to carry it on the plane. See what happened.
Yeah. I put seahorses in a swimming pool. Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. People are confusing entertainment. I mean, let's be real. This is partially mostly entertainment. We're not like out here saying, okay, here's how you breed clownfish. Step 1, step 2, that's not what this is about. This conversation is entertainment.
I think I would firmly put the start of that and some of the blame for that on the show Tanked.
Yeah.
Right. I know some beefers are asking me to tell for Ben and I to talk about Tanked. We'll do that in another show because that's a long time. But Tanked was entertainment, like all reality shows. If you watch a reality show, it's scripted. It's not made up. Stop it. You have to know the reality show is a lie. And Tanked was not about education. It was about entertainment. No. And people don't.
I feel like most of YouTube is in that. There's maybe a little information, a lot of entertainment, a lot of hyperbole, a lot of bluster.
Yeah.
So Ben and I we talked about this. Screw the YouTubers, but we also need them. So not all YouTubers are evil. Don't get me wrong.
No, there's some great ones out there.
But the other problem is that's how information is digested nowadays, whether we like it or not. Like I was gonna go back and say, I don't know if y'all know this, but the three of us are not getting younger. In fact, we are getting older. And yeah. Don't let this fool you. You get closer. There's some white in here.
Not me. I dyed mine since.
And the only reason you can't see my crow's feet is because I have a front-facing light. If I turn that light off, you're like, "What the hell?" But
that's that rock star lifestyle you live.
Yeah. But I mean, to a certain degree, like we're lamenting about the ways that we used to do stuff, but you have to be careful, I think, because I mean, it's like paying attention to TikTok. So, you know, people are like, oh, you should do a TikTok thing. It's like, I'm like a 46-year-old dude. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with TikTok. But I mean,
Masturbate.
yeah. But at the same time, too, you know, we're all, that's the name of the game. We've all devoted our lives to this in some way, shape, or form. So it's always the, you know, in the aquarium industry, it's the scrounging to, you know, let's be honest, I have 3 kids and I have a house and everything. But it's just like, you know, eking a living out of this. It's mostly you know, a passion thing. And trying to just do your damnedest to get all the bills paid. I'm not a millionaire, but you know, with the videos, I mean, it's just how people are consuming. And if we don't address that, and Matt, you know, you threw a new perspective on it, because I was like, oh shit, you got a team of people and you can't create stuff for free.
Well, look, you know,
Yeah.
our idea, I've talked about it. I've talked about it on the show. I want to do 2-minute videos about reef concepts, right?
Yeah.
They're a fucking pain in the ass to put. 2-minute video done well
You have to edit the hell out of
is
it
a pain in the ass.
versus rambling for an hour. Who
Right,
would've known?
that's easier.
It will get you. It will get the information across. That's not a bad idea. I'm going to steal it and do it.
Why don't you just? Why don't we just do it for you?
Poor man's copyright.
right.
Poor man's copyright.
You raise a lot of interesting points. I would go and say, you know, like, you're not going to watch a half-hour video when you need that one bit of information. And that's where you can't. And this could all change. I'm an interactive software developer by trade and by training. To think that we can now search and find PDFs, that wasn't always a thing. Maybe at some point we'll be able to search and find YouTube videos, and it will take us to the exact minute where that bit of information we want is stored. And then this will be a much more useful format than it is for distributing information.
Until then, I would beg YouTube people who are making videos and doing any kind of experiments to make 4 significant figures of your data and put that up at the end of your video so we can jump to the end, so we can actually see the goddamn video you're talking about instead of reading through a transcript. No, I mean the information you're talking about, instead of listening to you. I can't in my head go, okay, they said that their phosphate was 0.2 and then it was 1.7 and then they did this. You need to show it to us so we can like look at it like a significant figure. So please, please, until Matt's magic video parsing software comes around.
Hey Google, I'm up for hire. You gotta pay that license fee. No, I'm not.
Hey, let me throw in a quick 2 cents on this, because you know, I was listening to y'all again lamenting about social media for sure, and the, you know, the dilution of expert advice and this and that. I guess since, like, because I'm on the commercial side of stuff, another thing that I see diluting information out there, in my perspective, is marketing bullshit. It's gotten far stronger and far more pervasive, and so, like, you know, I know this sounds like I say this too often on this show, but like with my job, I'm where the rubber meets the road. People call me because their shit's messed up. I go to their house, they pay me money, I fix it. So I find brand new hobbyists that had the dough to chunk it out and they went the wrong way, and I fix it for them. So I get to hear about how they fucked it up, this and that and this and that. And I mean, I could write a book on crazy shit that people fucked up and people do. It's insane. And it's just, like I said, you know, my perspective from the 90s till now, like, just, you know, I hear what people are doing, and it's just a bunch of weird marketing shit. And that's why the first advice I always tell people, my first advice to you is be careful getting advice from people who have a vested interest in making money off of you, because their advice is going to be geared towards making money off of you. If you're paying me an hour of consultation, I'm just going to tell you what the fuck I think.
Yep.
Here. I think
Well,
we're gonna call. I think we're gonna call this episode "Old Men Yells at Cloud."
Jesus, look at us. We're pathetic.
No,
This
I
ain't
mean, I
no
remember-
TikTok video.
I remember doing aquarium maintenance. I had a maintenance company when I was 13. I was your
Yeah.
competition. My mom would drive me and then
No, you
she'd
weren't.
sit in the car. She'd sit in the car while I went inside and cleaned people's tanks, and she'd read a book.
With
I
that
used to-
sort of
I
thing,
remember-
you weren't my competition.
I used to take. I used to go to the fish store, work there. We'd go to the wholesaler. I'd pick stuff up, go back to the store. I'd get on the bus and go to a client's house with a box full of new animals for them,
Damn.
and then take the bus home.
Yeah.
Oh, those were the days. Everything was healthier.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
Hey,
used
this-
to get my horse and buggy
Yeah.
and pick up.
I remember when the pterodactyls used to chase me as I was going to work.
those damn velociraptors. Hey Richard, if you were a fan of this show and you were trying to think of ways that you could support this show so we can continue to make more content and even more diversified content, what do you think is the best way to do that?
I think there are two great ways to do that. One is to share the videos around that you like and put them into places where people may not be aware of the show, so more people see the show. More people see the show, we keep doing the show because that's part of the reason we do a show. It would be a very different show if we were just doing it for the two of us. So
Yeah.
we want eyes on and we want input. So put comments below and stuff like that. The other thing you could do is, I mean, what would you do?
We have a membership on the Reef Beef podcast.com/membership. So we have a membership. It's terrible, but I don't remember how many levels it has, but on the bottom level, I believe it's only $8 a month. And you can submit questions that you frequently see us answer on the show. So you can help us create content in that regard. On the upper level that I believe is like $50 a month or so. Or in a couple shows from now, we're actually having a beefer on the show. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, each level's got all different kinds of perks. You can check them out there. What we've been thinking about recently is if you like the show you just watched, go to the reefbeefpodcast.com/membership and buy us a beer. It's $8 and it helps us out. It helps us keep moving and keep buying the technical stuff we need. And we need a different video service now. So we got to pay for stuff. And if you like the series, become a member. It's only a little bit more at the lowest level, and at the upper levels, you got all kinds of perks and access to all kinds of merch and stuff like that. And we want to hear from you. So please support the show if you can. We appreciate it. Really, seriously, just commenting or reviewing us or sharing and subscribing really helps us a lot. And to everybody who has been supporting the show, we thank you so much. We dig the crap out of you, and we appreciate you. So thank you. But because it's Reef Beef, and I know you've got a beef, I want to hear your beef.
Bitch and moan.
Well, my beef right now is that people aren't taking what's going on in the House and Senate seriously. That's my beef. That we stand to basically lose access to the bulk of the diversity in the aquarium hobby and trade that we enjoy, that makes our hobby a rich and wonderful place. And instead of people respecting people in positions of in positions of experience, we are dealing with people just bringing the ultimate level of automatic skepticism and just talking when they don't know what they're talking about. And it's gonna cause endless problems, and there might not be a reason to have Reef Beef a year or two from now unless things get done. So that's my beef.
So tell us in less than a minute.
Okay.
What the issue? What encapsulate the whole thing? Ben and I talked about this on an episode we recorded the other day. But for this, give us your take on it. But seriously, keep it. What's going on in a minute, and then we'll expound on your opening statement.
Succinct.
Okay, so a
Already
amendment
off
to the
to a
Lacey-
bad start.
I am. An amendment to the Lacey Act was snuck into legislation and it passed the House. And if it doesn't get removed and it gets passed in the Senate, then it goes to Biden and he'll probably sign it into law. And then a whole bunch of bad stuff will happen.
Yeah.
You can overdub me and say a bunch of bad shit will happen.
Well, you just said it yourself, so we'll use that. So a bunch of bad shit could happen, right? So there's a bunch of problems with it. It's written stupidly, so there's way too much that is not defined. So it could be really bad. And knowing what we know about how the government is going to deal with these issues, which is by going, no, because we don't have the time or the effort or the energy to try to figure out the details that you idiots care about. We're just going to say no, which, by the way, is something that many of us, including you and me and Ben, have been saying for 20 years. But so part of the feeling that I'm getting from this particular bill and from people I've been talking about is this one's not going to happen. What's your take on that?
How would you know it's not going to happen?
Dude, Trump
talking
will
to the
never
senators?
get elected. Remember that shit? Remember that shit?
Well,
the
but
fuck up.
All right, so let me backtrack a little bit, because I think what you said, Rich, is really important, because it reminds me, you guys totally going on a tangent. In a former life, I was a part-time fishing guide. All right, and so we would hunt, chase. We would go find the salmon when they were running out of Lake Michigan, and we would fly fish for them. And so certain times of the year, it was legal to fish at night. And let me tell you how amazing it is to stand in a giant river in the middle of a city where all you can see is the radio towers and hear the fish going. And you're all out there with your glowing indicators and they're zipping through the air, and every once in a while there's a bunch of commotion because someone's got a fish on and we all have fun. And so that was a thing. And that was a lot of fun, really amazing experience. And you could do that up until a certain time of the year. And it was legal. And bottom line, we lost that privilege. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
We lost that privilege. And we lost that privilege to fish at night because the conservation department and the conservation officers of the DNR said, it's really hard to know if you're poaching or not at night. So we'll just make it illegal to fish at night. And if you're on the river at night, you're automatically breaking the law and we will deal with you.
Right.
Rather than try to figure out like, well, yeah, these guys, they're okay. This guy over here is spearing fish with a pitchfork. We need to deal with him. No, everyone out there at night, illegal all the time.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That is what we are up against with this legislation.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I've been saying for a long time that unless we get our house in order and get ahead of some of this shit, they're going to get ahead of it for us, and we're not going to like it because they don't give a shit about the animals like we do.
Well, I made this analogy before. It's like a divorce. Like either you and your spouse can figure it out. Otherwise, a judge is going to do it for you.
Right.
No one likes it.
Right. What I'm not clear on is that if this particular thing that's happening now is going to be the one. I tend to feel it's not right, but it's coming.
How many times did Hawaii not ban its fishery? And how many times did it ban its fishery?
Well, yeah, right. Okay.
And how many times has this gotten past the House? How many times hasn't it gotten past the House? We are in uncharted territory. And this was all done in the span of like less than a week.
Yeah.
I feel like it hit the radar at the end of January, and by February 3rd or 4th, it was already rammed through.
Well, I think if it passes again in the Senate, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that's not going to happen is because other animal hobbies have got their shit together to make some noise about it.
And then why don't we, the powers that be in our industry, talk to the powers that be in the parrot industry and the reptile?
There are no powers that be in our industry. We have no powers. There's no centralized body. There's just a bunch of people yelling on soapboxes.
Do parrot people have that? Do reptile people have that?
Yes, absolutely. Reptile people have there's a group called the U.S. ARC. It's a 501c6 where Mazda is a 501c3, so Mazda can't do political shit. The 501c6 exists to do political shit, and they are well funded and they are on top of it.
We're just going to lose our toys unless someone does that.
Well, but hopefully somebody else with more toys is going to defend their toys, and that will help us keep our toys as well.
Yeah, we have been very much in the side. We are easy. The aquarium hobby, easy scapegoat. We're a luxury. Whereas I think about like the U.S. Ark exists because people have been afraid of snakes and trying to ban snakes for a long time.
Right.
And ball pythons can sell for several $1,000s a piece. Mm-hmm. It's the whole designer clownfish reality. Whereas it takes the same amount of money to make the $5 clownfish or the $500 clownfish, but people pay for the $500 clownfish, so there's money to burn and there's money to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. If we weren't all so cheap, there would be more money. But it really falls on, I hate to say it, but it falls on the industry, because if this goes through, the aquarium world will not cease. But the aquarium hobby in the United States is a big component of what supports all the industry here at home, but then also all the industry around the world. When we are 50% of the market share, if that hobby dries up, the ramifications, I mean, the fact that this is put into the America Competes Act, meant to create jobs, and it has the potential to put tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people out of work, which will destroy a multi-billion-dollar industry, which will then cascade out beyond. I mean, I sure hope it doesn't happen, because I'll be out of a job. I'll be doing something completely different.
I'll be setting up your saltwater tank with clownfish and Sherman RBTAs, anemones, and that's your saltwater tank right there.
But see, that's the thing. That leads me back to when the Center for Biological Diversity tried to get Percula clownfish listed as an endangered species.
Right.
Okay. Which would have made me a felon, because I had Percula clownfish in my basement. And I'm breeding and owning an endangered species. I'm violating the Endangered Species Act. It's like, what were we going to have to do, me and the 50,000 other people in this country who have this animal that's plentiful in captivity? What the heck is going to happen if that animal gets thrown on the endangered species list? We all became criminals if that happened. It didn't happen. But how many times do things not happen? And it just takes that one time where it does and everything changes.
Oh, and it's coming.
And so people take this as saber rattling, or, just blowing it out of proportion, not to mention all the people who can't even find the current version of the legislation or put the pieces together. Because I think, as far as we know, the version that has passed the House hasn't actually been finally cobbled together and pushed out to the public. It's not there yet, but you can follow all the steps and pieces. No one knows where this came from. I'm getting phone calls about this every day. People like digging down. They cannot figure out where this came from, but that doesn't matter. It's in there. And we have to deal with it. So we get so much back and forth of, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's not this. And Rich, you might be right. Hopefully this one doesn't happen. I hope to God it doesn't, even though I'm an atheist. But
not me.
so
Richard's
I don't
very
know.
Religious.
If it's not this one, my understanding is that this is not the first time this particular set of language has been put forth and it has been shot down. I mean, that was the thing with the Hawaii bans. It was always the same language. They would just push it back.
Yeah. And,
they just keep pushing it back.
And our industry, I'm with you. I think it's up to the industry and the trade, not to the hobbyists, to deal with this. But we've learned almost nothing from Hawaii, right? And for 15 years, been talking about Hawaii, even for longer, right? Bruce Carlson was dealing with this shit in the 70s, right? And we still don't have an us to talk to represent us. We have PJAC, which is trying, but PJAC is not really people, they don't really represent the trade or the industry. They're trying, and they're just going to keep coming until there's nothing to do. And the problem is they make us run around like ants, and you get 1,000 phone calls, and then it goes away, right? And then everyone just goes back to, well,
Complacency.
why isn't my shit cheaper?
Yep.
I want more stuff. I want a Queensland grouper, and then I'll let it go. And then it's going to hit us again, and we're just going to run around with chickens without our heads off again.
USARC is set up that there's a person that this is their job.
Right.
This is someone's full-time job. And there's other support staff. So people, I've gotten a couple emails like, well, you should cover this, Matt. You should investigate and see. Like, I have a magazine to publish. I have all these other, I've got a family to run. Like, when did this become my particular job to drop everything else I do that actually puts food on the table to go to fight this fight for everyone?
For free.
It doesn't work that way.
Red Talbot must be spinning in his grave.
Who we
Except
need
he's
to get
alive
on the
and well.
show.
And he's not dead. Yeah, Rhett
Who we need to get on the show.
was trying to do actual reporting about what's going on, and no one wanted to give him any money for it.
Shoot the messenger.
Not even, they didn't even want to pay his expenses. And so what do you, there's no, everybody just wants, they want a clownfish with long fins, and that's all they care about. And look, what we said about Hawaii was like, look, when Hawaii gets stopped, no one's going to care, right? The hobby will just grind on to the next fish, and that's exactly what happened, right? Hawaii exports stopped, and no one really gives a shit.
Well, I mean, you're going to reach a level where people, I mean, maybe we're there. So a new person came into the hobby, let's say 6 months ago, and then they just don't know that yellow tangs used to be a thing. Like, you just didn't know, you don't know where you jump into the train at.
Well, I mean, I think the Achilles tang is the one that really gets me, as the perfect example. Like, we just don't have Achilles tangs anymore. They're not a thing. They're an awesome fish, but you can go spearfish one and kill it and eat it. That's fine. But God forbid it gets thrown into the aquarium trade and generates $300 of revenue along the way. That fish, and it's Red Talbot who put this, really hit it home with me, that once the fish leaves the reef, what happens to it is immaterial. When we're talking about saving the reefs and reef conservation, it's the act of taking the fish off the reef that matters. So if it really mattered, then the spearfishing would have been taken off the table too.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
But
Because we're the easy target, we're the luxury, we're the eating. Everyone's got to eat, so we can't. We have to let people spearfish and kill as many Achilles tangs as they want, but one in an aquarium is too many. So the logic is faulty, but it's also that classic shifting baselines, reality of the world. You come into the hobby and Achilles tangs were never in the hobby if you were in the hobby in the last year. Oh, it's just a fish you just can't get. And that's usually just the end of it. No one says, well, why can't you get an Achilles tang? And then, oh, I need to do something, or that was bad or wrong, or man, I should maybe put some money towards fighting this thing that I care about, for this thing that I care about. And, we all have limited budgets, but the people who are really going to lose out, we will all lose out, but it's the industry that supports our hobby that's really where the problem is, because they will lose their revenue streams. Then all those people go out of work. So if we want to, I waffle between thinking about this almost from a freedom standpoint. Our country's built on freedom. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, I think we all can agree that for the most part, freedom should kind of be there. And as long as your freedom doesn't affect someone else's freedom, you're probably okay. That's kind of like the veil of how we define whether something's good or not. As long as you're not affecting someone else, we should kind of leave you alone. And so, when we get into this area of attacking people's interests and groups on personal, moral, and ethical grounds, that's when you're impinging on my freedom. And so in the name of freedom, knock it off.
Yeah, except I think you would agree with me on this. The people that are exporting full-grown angels in a quart of water to save money should be taken out and beaten with a fucking stick, right? And it should be made to stop. But that gets wrapped into your freedom kind of argument.
But that's where we can talk about animal welfare. I am all for saving the environment. I am all for ethical treatment of animals, but those things get warped.
That's right.
They get warped into something else, which is not really what it is about.
I think, and kind of the soapbox I've been on about this for however long has been, we haven't cleaned our own house and we have no legs to stand on. Because anytime anybody goes, well, it's about education. Well, first of all, your home tank's not really about education. Stop it. Your home tank is about entertainment for you, for 80% of the hobby. And that's fine. So, but stop it. But you are also supporting every crappy player in the trade and industry. And you're supporting them by kind of going, I don't really want to look at that because I really want access to stuff and I want it to be inexpensive. And that's, until we do something about that, I really don't know how to defend ourselves in a way that is robust.
Yeah, but we're not even being attacked on those levels, to be honest.
It's true.
That's not what this is. They're not coming after the aquarium trade and being like, oh, you're still cyanide fishing over in that place, and so you guys should all be shut down. We are way bigger than that for this one.
But we don't even have that to fall back on, right? I keep seeing people go, we should fight Snorkel Bob. Everyone should yell at Snorkel Bob. And I go, well, where the fuck were you 15 years ago when we were doing that? And he just fucking flipped it around and used it to make us look even more stupid to his constituents. Engaging with Snorkel Bob is not going to help. Don't do it. You're not going to educate him. You're just giving him ammo.
Snorkel Bob won.
Yeah.
He won.
And he's going to keep winning. And so we need to, I think this would be a lot easier if we had a moral and ethical leg to stand on, where we could really go, look, we are right. And I saw somebody said something about that, well, hobbyists are the first ones to stand up and try to, do something about environmental concerns. No, they're not. A small percentage of hobbyists are, but whenever a thing has come up, I can't even remember who was doing it. Who was selling pieces of the Reef? They weren't selling, but you could sponsor a section of the Florida Reef track, right? And that was around for a hot minute, and it didn't get funded by a lot of people. And they didn't make. If they made $50,000 on that, I would be surprised. We just don't. And what I keep seeing is people going, well, we need to do something to make sure that the environment is safe so we can keep getting these animals. Nope. We just got to put them in our tanks so that they'll survive. It's like, we're going to lose. No. We're going to lose because that is not a position anybody's going to support.
Well, okay, but that's that tangential aquarium arc concept.
Yeah.
You're going to go back and forth where, red-tailed sharks, basically being thought they were extinct in the wild for decades, and they're still an endangered species. It's just, we found a remnant population of them, but they're everywhere. And you can walk into Petco and buy one or 10. And it's only because people like them and want to keep them in their tank because they're pretty, that species is abundant, and it's only abundant in captivity.
Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on.
Also had nothing to do with that.
Right.
I want to draw that understanding that my view on the aquarium hobby, and this is where Andy and Ryan and I kind of butted our heads and figured it out. It's like, I'm not against in situ, conservation efforts, but I do view the aquarium hobby and industry and all the aquaculture that happens around that as being the last hope for something. I'm not out here saying we should be the first hope for a red-tailed shark, but the only reason the red-tailed shark really exists is because people like it and wanted to buy it and put it in their tanks. Well, so
let me
that's not ideal, but that's better than not having red-tailed sharks to me.
Right. Now let me ask you, what's going on hobby-wise with the one area red-tailed sharks have been found again?
Nothing.
Then we're doomed.
It's just immaterial. The industry and hobby doesn't care. They've got their red-tailed sharks. They don't need to go to wild to get more. So it's not really their concern. But that's where I'll go different and say, like, the Gadeids and that side of the freshwater hobby, and to a lesser extent, the people who keep Lake Victoria cichlids and the CARES programs, there is a lot of awareness generated once you reach that level And we're sitting here all as veteran aquarists who rode out all the tank crashes, all the fish diseases, all the coral RTNs, and all the bad crap that happens, because it happens. These are living animals. They're not immortal. And heaters fry and kill your beautiful reef tank. That's part of, I think if you make it this far, you've got bad things that happen to you that were not necessarily your fault, but you get over that. You learn to accept that this is never going to last forever. And you are able to accept that long-term period of success that you have is special and worth it. And the individual tank crash here or there is not what's going to define you or the hobby as a whole. That's when you get to the point where you can think about, I'm going to fill my basement with Victorian cichlids just because they're special. And while I don't think the Lake Victoria Species Survival Program is ever going to come to me and say, Matt, you're the only person in the world who still has this fish. That actually has happened. And so when you get to that point of caring, you might not care that all those Godeids are not the prettiest fish. Sometimes it goes beyond, but you have to weed through a lot of people who never reach that level before you get to that.
That's right. And there's very few of those people. And most of the people in the hobby who talk, you've got one marine beta. You're not doing anything. You're not helping. You're
not really hurting either. You're just there.
You're just there. But at the same time, I think we should be making more of a effort to help wild collection spots and to help the environment from which we get these animals from. I think if we had an active surcharge that was making money for an organization that was going around the world and doing coral farming and setting up coral, displays at lagoons with hotels on them and, doing that and pouring money out to there and getting corals from those places rather from the wild reefs, except for some broodstock here and there that was needed. Yeah. I think we would have a leg to be able to go out into the world and go, look, we do good in the world too. This is not just about me having something pretty in our living room. And I don't think we're there. I don't think we're there in the way that the freshwater hobby is there. And I don't think we're breeding stuff in the way the freshwater hobby is breeding stuff.
No. And that goes back to the start of our other conversation where the things that need to happen are more commercial at scale. Right? There are a lot of freshwater fish that you just can't breed at home, but they can be farmed just fine.
Right.
So then you also have to remember the scale of that hobby being, the last numbers that were published, I haven't seen new ones, a couple years old now, but 14 million freshwater hobbyists and I think 2 million saltwater in the US. Yeah. So there's, 7 times more freshwater people, even though I'm going to guess 6 of that 7 are people with goldfish and betas. I'm just going to guess, throw that number out there. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. But it's interesting to me, my first fish were the 10-gallon tank that my parents bought for me and my brother. And I was breeding, guppies in a jar. And there is that window into caring. I see it with my daughter much more than my son. So not every hobbyist is going to become the next conservation savior or champion for the reefs. But I do know that without this, it's far less likely for those people to exist and care. I can say that with some certainty. So,
well, I don't want individuals to do it. I want the trade industry to go, this is important to our fucking way we make our living. Let's make sure we're making the campsite better than when we got here, right? Yeah. Instead of this weird idea that's prevalent now of, well, we better fucking get it because it's going to go away. Yeah. And that just blows my mind.
We're going to fucking accelerate it. But that's when people say like, oh, tanked. Hey, any exposure is good exposure. And that always made me fucking throw up in my mouth because it's just like, we already have this hobby that we have that's threatened. Hey, let's invite a bunch of more motherfuckers over to do it. And meanwhile, we're just trying to sell them shit and not advise them in any sort of ethical way. And those of us who chose to be ethical usually take less money home. And it's just, I mean, that's not a winning combination.
Yeah, I guess I just want us to be going at it in a non-reactionary way. That's all. That's if I were to sum this up as a thing, and here we are again reacting, and here we are again looking at the forums, watching people come up with ideas like they've never been thought of before, and not understanding why Masna's not doing more. And it's like, oh my God. I don't know.
That's the weird thing. When you hem and haw a lot, then people listen to you. And then after a while, well, that's generalizing, but you'd have a tendency, you listen to someone bitch, and then you're like, after a while, you're like, well, why don't you fucking do something about it?
Right. Well, at least I can say I've done something about it. So I'm very happy to sit on my soapbox nowadays. And just like Matt and go, when Matt, you were saying people call you, why don't you do it? It's like, well, I got other shit to do. How much are you going to pay me to do it? Just like Rhett, I can't feel good enough about Rhett going, I can't do this for you guys for free. I got to go somewhere else later.
This sort of reminds me of the whole recycling thing too, where they're like, where it was like they found out that it was from the plastic industry sort of admonishing the end user to like recycle now. And it's like, look, motherfucker, quit making plastic.
Right.
I don't have another option.
It's the same thing with water in California. Hey, take shorter showers. Residents in California are only 15% of the water use.
Yeah.
I could shower till I had enough water to clean my huge dick, and it wouldn't make a difference.
That's an hour right there. Yeah, go yell at the avocado farmers.
It's all about who's easiest to go after, and we are, as Aquarius, easy to go after, inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. So
yeah, and jobs will, and if it happens or when it happens, jobs will go. Yeah. But we regulate industry. We regulate industry. We regulate industries out of existence all the time. So I can't even, at the base of it, the idea of, well, we want to help keep animals alive in the wild. Yeah, we should be supporting that. But then we get into, but then you're going to price people out of the hobby. It's like, well, yeah, sorry.
I know I have a weird opinion on that, because for what my job is, I don't care about that, because I tend to deal with the wealthy, and I say price motherfuckers out of the hobby.
Well, look, I don't think it's anybody's right to have an inexpensive Dr. Seuss fish. Fuck you. Fuck you. You want an inexpensive fish? There's fucking 100 species that are around that are commonly bred or very easy to collect. That's what you should fucking have. Stop it. I don't know, man. I'm still upset. I'm still upset that Lamborghinis aren't more affordable for me.
Reminds me of all the time I spend in stores too, because people would come in and it's like a constant struggle for them wanting something cheaper. And it's like, the fact that you are standing here, the fucking front of me, that I can open the door and even talk to you about this stupid conversation. And I'm already not making enough fucking money, and you're asking me to make less money. Get the fuck out of my face and the fuck out of my store. It's ridiculous.
Unless you buy Eco Aqualizer.
Yeah, and then it just takes all your worries away.
Yeah, and we wonder why there's some nefarious players in the industry and trade, right? Yeah. Matt Pedersen, last word.
Oh.
No, bullshit.
So I do want to say I shared that URL with that latest, like, debunking the myths about everything that's going on. And
yeah.
I really would like you guys to, like,
we'll link it.
Who are watching Reef Beef, go to reeftorainforest.com. What is the title? What do we give it? It'll probably Aquarium Apocalypse. Can Lacey Act amendments really cripple or end the U.S. aquarium and pet trade?
We'll look in the show notes. We're gonna link it.
Yeah, but the reason is the person who wrote this chose to be anonymous because of the amount of crap that he or she will get for writing it.
Right.
That's a problem.
It's a huge problem.
Major problem when someone's out here saying, look, all this craziness, I'm a person with knowledge, you should respect me because of my knowledge and experience, but that's no longer enough in this world. And I'm going to put forth very logical, factual based answers to all these crazy ideas that people are coming up with and say yes and no and talk frankly. That's really the only bit of information you probably need. Because while I said Sanjay Joshi is not the only person in the world who can tell me about lighting, I am going to check myself and not talk about lighting if Sanjay's here and saying, no, Matt, you're wrong. Or I'm just going to say, go talk to Sanjay. He's right here and he knows better than I ever will. So, you know, there's one thing in the marine breeding world. It was, you were an expert because you knew more than anyone else in the room because it was new to everyone. But when it comes to like dealing with legislation and lobbying and the government and how it works and what legal terms mean, all these people on the internet are not lawyers and legislators and lobbyists. They don't know what they're talking about. So when someone with that background has something to say, everyone should just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And
but dude, we
don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't tear down that person's credibility because you don't like what they're saying or it's uncomfortable. This is the reality.
We see this in everyday life when there's a new thing that's going on in the world. Everyone's a fucking lawyer. Everyone's a virologist. Everyone's a this. And it's just like, but you know, and again, but I see that because of social media, we all have a voice that can be heard by so many people. What about when Elon Musk's, data link in the head? What if when everyone in the fucking world can hear everyone's thoughts? You want to drown this shit out more? You want to go more the fucking insane? Put on your seatbelt.
That's a lot, man.
I mean, that's my beef is stop spouting off like you know what you're talking about if you really don't.
It's funny because
just because you have a following and just because you have an opinion doesn't mean it's valid. It doesn't mean that what you're saying is right or correct or helpful. So,
well, we're right back to Carl Sagan and Demon Haunted World again in the skeptical reef keeping articles and Dawkins and, experts are the people who go, oh, well, there's probably 20 people in the room who know more than I about this particular thing. This is what I understand. Who knows more? And the worst is people who go, I am the expert. You should listen to me.
I don't know. Dawkins is kind of like that.
Although I find myself sometimes going, God damn it. Why aren't you listening to me?
Yeah. Dawkins
really? Why are you arguing with me about breeding Sepia bendensis?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Too much skepticism. It's your fault. You telling everyone to be skeptical. Now they're skeptical and we are reaping what we sowed, Rich.
You
created my fault,
Richard.
My fault. I take the blame. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry the hobby is going to be destroyed.
You destroyed it. Richard destroyed it.
Matt, this was really great. We'd like you to come back on in the future.
Sure.
Just very good discussions. Different points of view from mine that I have to still respect, even if I disagree. And
wait, we disagree. You and me disagree on something?
We always disagree on something.
Oh, we gotta fight like ninja style, like something. Well, no, I know I'll end up hanging upside down. So
yeah, that's true.
That.
No, like Skeksis and Dark Crystal, we need a trial by stone.
Oh, I'll do it.
Trial by stone.
Gelfling. When you say something that I don't agree with, I sit back and I go, I have to think about that a lot more. And I still may disagree with it.
Don't, Rich.
But yeah, I know. Yeah. But I mean, I like that kind of discussion. I had some discussion with Terrence like that the other day. It was like, wait, we disagree, but we have to listen to each other because we respect each other. And, maybe this kind of discussion and the discussion I had with Terrence the other day can get more people to stop. Oh God, if you're talking about this issue, please don't ever say Republicans and Democrats. Please don't ever even say that. That's not what this is about. We got to find what we really think, where we agree, where we disagree, and how we're going to move forward in a way that seems like it's going to be the most beneficial for us. We got to not tear each other down. Now, the people to tear down are the people who are getting on and doing quick videos about this and saying, look what I'm doing. I'm defending you. But on my list, I sell fucking Queensland groupers and Panther groupers, and fuck those people.
I should be able to buy a Panther grouper if I want to, Rich.
They're so cute when they're little.
You know what?
I mean,
You know what? You know what?
You should get Andy Ryan and me, and we should have a beef 4-way about big fish and whether there's any place, because my stance is my freedom. If I can do it ethically and responsibly, I should have the ability to do it.
I agree 100%, and I think Andy Ryan agrees 100%. What Andy and I disagree about is what's usually taken in that context, in that conversation, is that the supermarket approach to keeping these animals for sale should not include Queensland groupers and Panther groupers. If you want one, you should go to the Aquarium Trade Organization and you should say, hey, this is the system I have. I would like certification to have one of these fucking animals collected for me. Oh, but then only rich people can have those animals. You've got a $10,000 reef tank in your fucking house. Shut up.
Yep. Therefore, you are rich.
Yeah. So we agree, but we disagree, but we really agree, which is fucking crazy.
Wrap your heads around that.
All right, Matt, I'm going to thank you for being our guest, and we will have you back. And I want to thank Ben for being my best friend. And I want to thank the Lord above for not existing. And I would like to thank saltwateraquarium.com and the Biota Group for sponsoring this show. And finally, I would like to thank Amazonius, and I would like to thank Coral Magazine, and I would like to thank what's the name of your company where you sell plants for the trade?
Oh yes, yes.
Mini Waters.
Mini Waters. So I did a lot more
Terrarium
fish,
plants.
but the pandemic absolutely crushed the ability to get fish here, and the breeders I used to work with don't breed anymore. I have breeding projects that are kind of stalled. So like for the last 2 years, there's basically been no fish up here in Duluth. I mean, I've got some fish, but the fish side of that business just COVID victim.
Yeah.
But the vivarium plants took off like crazy. So I mean,
Set up a vivarium, buy your plants from Mini Waters.
It's a terrestrial reef tank. Of course, I can't ship right now. It's like 40 below. So.
Actually, that segment is that's growing. That's a growing segment.
No, and it's if you haven't kept a terrarium or a paludarium, you really should. They're really cool. You can do a small one. They're really worth doing. You'll learn a bunch of shit. But
no water changes.
No water changes. And I want to thank.
I don't have a job for that.
I want to thank the Beefers for supporting us and sharing us. And now I'll shut up and let you guys have the last words. And then we'll be fucking done with this show that's gone on forever.
Thank God. Is Richard done talking?
I think most of it was him.
Hello?
And then me. And then Ben, you're kind of there. So I'm gonna thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna let Ben have the final word since he had the first word. And since he's got the biggest potty mouth out of all of us, he'll know how to finish this off, right?
You don't talk to Richard in private. That motherfucker.
So I'm just gonna thank you guys all for watching and for hopefully, I could see that. Can they see that? I don't know.
We got to be
head a little
ethical,
bit.
even if you don't know what you're doing. You got to strive for ethics. This is this industry, this hobby is hurting and is in a dangerous position to be hit by an asteroid. And we keep saying, "Oh, near miss, near miss. One's gonna hit us."
Righteous. Peace on, Reef Beefers. All right, you tell me when you're ready, Ben. I'll do the disclaimer, and then you do something, and then we'll be going.
I don't give a shit when don't give a shit when I'm ready. Just do your disclaimer.
Why don't you eat a fucking bag of
Why don't you
tiny
eat
vaginas?
a bowl of dicks? Go ahead.
I have a bag of dicks somewhere. That
Really?
Kaylin's friend made me when they were in 6th grade.
They little gummy dicks?
Give me little Sculpey clay dicks.
A loose bag of dicks.
A loose bag of. I used to sell loose dicks.
We're done.
That's all. Thanks,
All
Matt.
right, are you guys ready?
Okay, fuck you. Good night. So I moved here to Houston in the year 2000, and I immediately worked at a store called Fish Ranch for a couple years. There was a guy that used to come in, a pretty muscular dude would come in. He was a quiet guy. He drove a beat up Mustang. As a matter of fact, it had bungee cords and pieces were falling off. Bless you, from an atheist. But the guy would come in and buy feeders all the time, ghost shrimp and this and that. His name was Dr. Frank Marini. And I had no fucking idea whatsoever. Him and I sort of became friends at the store, because he would always come in all the time and get the same thing. He wouldn't talk to me all that often. Of course, back then, like my knowledge was, he's probably was just like, whatever. And I didn't even know he was a doctor, and I think at that time, I don't know if had just got his doctorate or he already had it. But so that was like 2000, 2001. And it wasn't until I left that store and went to an aquarium conference and people were talking about him and showed his picture. And I was like, what in the ever loving fuck? That's Frank. I didn't know he was a doctor. And then I found out he was like a cancer researcher at Memorial Hermann or St. Luke's or something like that. And it's like, this is the guy that like bred, bank guys and so on and so forth. And him and I used to talk about, he liked lionfish a lot. And he always wanted me to look into getting some like African deep water lion. And he was keeping all sorts of stuff like that. And it's one of the weirdest things that's happened to me in the industry, to have been hanging out with this dude like all this time. And then I'm like, wait, he was so humble. He never fucking said anything about anything that he does or did. That part's amazing to me, to have the humility.
So you
There it is.
back there, Ben. That big thing, this big chest of knowledge and wisdom.
I have one too. Yeah, I have one too.
There's also one over here.
Yeah.
But so you're talking about Frank and liking lionfish.
Yeah.
Whose book? Who wrote a book on lionfish?
Yeah.
Frank.
Right there. Yeah. Who owns Frank's book on lionfish?
I could only desire to be that humble, but I'm telling you, and I haven't spoken to Frank in 20 years, and I don't even know if he'd remember who I am. He's got to be one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life. He never said word fucking one about anything that he did. I had no idea.
What a dummy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. He couldn't buy a better car. Half of the time when he'd leave half of his Mustang in our parking lot.
He was paying off his student loans.
Yeah.